You are most welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am very happy to be at least for some time with you, sharing my own views on this module. But prior to getting into this module, let me have a short introduction. I am Dr. H. Beck, Professor in the Center for Community Organization and Development Practice, School of Social Work, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. I'm very happy to share and go through a journey, the module on history of community organization. Now, the history of community organization has emerged through diverse situations, circumstances, conditions, political circumstances, socio-economic conditions of different countries, and finally the emergence of community organization as a full-fledged method of social work practice. So this module will give us a clear understanding of and familiarizing ourselves with the history of community organization. Second, to understand the different aspects of community organizations today, and to understand the history and the present status of community organization in India. 19th century in England, industrial revolutions of mid-80s brought a transformation of England's economy from agrarian to industrial. Massive migrations of people from rural areas to urban centers, particularly on the zone of industrialization. It also led to rapid urbanization. Urban centers were marked by exploitations, sickness, accidents, disabilities, unemployment, pauperizations, and other socio-economic issues. It was community understood that these problems were due to individual deficiencies rather than the result of a larger structural problems. Hence, there was an emergence of the charities and private philanthropies that helped individuals to overcome some of the challenges and get into the arena of poverty alleviations. So what we see is the emergence of charity organizations. That was a crude form of community organizations at that stage and period of time. So the formations of the London Charity Organization Society and private philanthropists worked autonomously and without much coordination among each other. Subsequently, some individuals and families received financial help from more than one charity organizations. London 1869, first charity organization society was formed to reduce the incidences of repeated providing support to the same recipients. The objectives of this London cause was coordinated efforts among the various charity groups to ensure optimal utilizations of these resources and reaching to the most needy families and persons. Roof 1869, London Course believed that self-respecting families who were struggling to keep themselves from destitution should be helped and encouraged, and that charities should be organized and coordinated so that best use could be made of these resources. Charity organization societies therefore were intervening in low economic and impoverished urban communities to identify individuals and families in need of essential services. By addressing poverty effects on individuals by providing systematic support, its attempt was to strengthen emergent urban communities. Now let us look at some of the functions of the London Charity Organisation societies. It emphasized a scientific method, systematically identifying and registering applicants for charity as well as supervise the administering of charity. Thus, it gave birth to the casework method in social work practice as well. It helped to distinguish between the genuinely deserving and not deserving poor with the purpose of enabling struggling families to get back on their feet rather than those individuals who permanently dependent on the charity for their survival. COS thrived in England in this period, kept systematic and centralized records of charity seekers through registration bureaus, stressed thorough and objective investigation, emphasized professional training of the COS personnel, focusing on coordination among various charities. Community organization, most important aspects of COS. Hence, through its activities, the COS in each area became the nerve center of information, updates, and referral for several services within the community. By 1875, the COS had a number of offices all over which had effective coordination with each other. Charity Organization Society of the United States of America, 1877 was the fourth year of economic depression and industrial strife in the United States. First COS in the United States modeled on the London COS for the exact same purpose. Objectives of the COS in United States of America by inducing a rational system of scientific charitable administration, cyclical poverty could be addressed and deserving poor could gain some support in their hardships. Now there are some criticisms on charity organizations. Chiefly, the COS never concerned itself with the larger structural causes of poverty, such as the economic causes that induce poverty in the first place. Progressive era of the 80s, new wave of economic thought, questioning of the forces of capitalism and its impact on labor and human life. Large groups of unemployed people took to the streets condemning capital, emphasizing social reforms, demanded that charity be focused on not individual causes and personal issues, but to look and eradication of social causes of poverty. Therefore, the birth of the settlement house movement, goals of the settlement houses was to meet the immediate need of the working class in their own neighborhoods by providing them with the services and basic reforms was a collaborative practice that emphasized community building and social upliftment. In England, collaborative practice that emphasized community building and social action, goals of the settlement house movement meeting the immediate need to work class in their own neighborhood by providing them with service and basic reforms. Lo and behold, London in 1844, first university settlement house in England started by Samuel Barnett, who believed the settlement houses were places where richer students could live alongside, learn about and contribute to the welfare of much poorer people. Hence, settlement workers were middle-class reformers, largely consisting of women volunteers who worked and located themselves in houses in the middle of urban poor, working class neighborhoods, conducted several research related works and services to the humankind. So modeled after the settlement houses in England, in the United States, with the purpose to ease the transition of immigrant workers into the labor force and to help them to assimilate middle-class American values. Neighborhood Skills, New York in 1886, first settlement house in the United States started by Stanton Coit. Several others followed. Hull House, Chicago in 1889, started by John Adams and Ellen Starr. Henry Street Settlement in New York in 1893, started by Lillian Wald. By late 1890s, at least 400 settlement houses were already in existence in the United States of America. Characteristic features of settlement houses movement were that several important leadership positions were filled up by women in nearly half of the United States settlement houses. Now, the strengths of the settlement house movement, by locating themselves right in the center of urban poor working class neighborhoods, the settlement houses accomplished a lot its peak around 1920s. Progressive approach aimed to gain insight about poverty from directly experiencing the conditions under which poor people lived in, enabled the poor to form organizations to improve their situations. They helped build workers' organizations that would agitate for reforms, persuaded municipals and state governments to take responsibility for programs that they had initiated, lobbied with the local government to pass reforms legislations related to workplace safety, minimum wage, and sanitation. Hull House, Chicago provided education, classes in history, art and literature, and services, creche, public bath, homeless shelter, and community kitchen, and a space for political activism, advocating for social legislation to combat poverty at several levels in politics. Settlement House laid the foundation for the charity organizations grounded in the idea of the rich and poor living close society together and being interdependent. So the emergence of community organization as of now appeared most in Western countries, to start with England and United States of America. And this happened because of the industrialization process, which also escalated the urbanization process, where we witness the flock of migrants and getting into a mess of wide variety of difficulties, like seeking shelter, problem of unemployment, securing livelihood avenues, education, and various other human-related concerns. So there emerged the charity organization as a tangible mechanisms to come into existence and supporting these suffering communities, the families and individual persons as a whole. Now these charity organizations were obviously organized, but they were not coordinated. There was lack of federation, and no one scientifically gave the directions and facilitated the delivery of services. Subsequently, many of the charity organizations repeatedly supplied life supports to families over times, again and again, at the instance and at the cost of depriving most other needy families. So it was important to bring a scientific method into the service delivery and mechanisms of enabling people to overcome some of the problems that occur at that point of time. Lately also, radical social workers came into and asserted incorporating scientific approach to resolving the problem. Charity organizations was one that can have a lot of appreciations because of its relevance at that raw stage of people's suffering. But later, the eliminations and eradication of problem and hence getting into the root causes of poverty, root causes of sanitation, root causes of migration, and many other problems of unemployment of the people had to be eradicated or resolved. So this was the initial stage where the charity organizations probably came in as part of the latest method of community organization. Now there is a shift, and that shift starts from new method in the late 1930s, where the radical workers began to emphasize the inclusion of new methods in keeping with the socio-political changes of the time. Several innovative approaches evolved in the field of community organizations. New emphasis controlled by community members instead of agency-driven activities. Because it is the community which faces the crux of the problems, and therefore the entire community needs to get acquainted with the emerging conflicts and causes of the problem and get into tackling by coming together as a community rather than being a beneficiary of agency-driven activities. A new milestone, the Lane Report 1939, it was Robert P. Lane's report titled The Field of Community Organization. It situated community organization practice within social work education, legitimized community organization as a method of social work practice by presenting a systematic and comprehensive descriptions of roles, activities, and methods in the field of community organization. Now, radical organizing, late 1930s, United States of America, marked by a militant labor movement of industrial workers. Solalansky, community organization must have a relationship with the neighborhood. They must believe that using conflict strategies result in greatest gains, and that they must fight for concrete victories because willing build organizations. One of the marvelous things which Solalansky brought in his approach to community organization was the recognitions and acknowledgement of the existing CBOs. No matter in what form, it could be various other institutions, of any institutions, be it religious or any other councils. He brought them together, pooled the resources and energy, and took advantage against fighting of all the ill effects of abnormal existence that got spread because of urbanizations and industrializations and capitalizations and so on and so forth. So developed by Bike of the Year Neighborhood Council, a broad coalition of union leaders, the priests, small business owners, and neighborhood residents attempted to build a united voice of discontent among fragmented slum communities. Thus got jobs and services from corporations, the Chicago political machinery, and federal government are stable, democratic, and effective organizations of neighborhoods. But there is criticisms of Alinsky's approach. The main one, which I would like to bring to the table, is injudicious dependence of neighborhood elites. Emphasis on established institutions and already present viable organizations such as churches or ethnic organizations, and willingness to take up issues that may cause disagreement and its exclusions of marginal groups was criticized for avoiding race issues. There is a war on poverty program in United States of America. In 1960s, United States poverty rate was 20%. Economic drain in Vietnam War, and United States President Lyndon Johnson declared an unconditional war on poverty. Comprehensive social welfare legislations, the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964. It sponsors neighborhood self-projects, promote social actions, coordinate existing local services, provide new services, and Office of Economic Opportunities administered federal spending on programs such as food stamps, job camps, work-study programs, Vista and Head Start. Focusing on maximum participation through grassroots organizations. This was a much better access and strategies, as there was an attempt of bringing the people all together into the conflict and seeking remedies for their problems. Now there emerged the community action program agencies that moved beyond the service delivery and began advocacy and organizing. National Welfare Rights Organization was born, provided services to the community such as running childhood clinics and child lunch programs, and defended and advocated the needs of welfare rights to the recipients. The community organization practice in United States located within period of expansions and contractions of civil rights, labor rights, and social welfare rights. This could be put in some phases of expansions. First phase, 1900 to 1918, the progressive era characterized by public investment and social activism. Second phase, during 1933 to 1946, and the World War II, the New Deal. Third phase could be 1960 to 1975. With this diverse endeavors on the emergence of community organization, we get into the Indian context where community organization emerged. In India, unfortunately, people also lived almost practically all the circumstances and conditions that prevail in Western countries. But there wasn't much documentation done, and India could be one of the best source of the emergence of community organizations had it been documented by some authors and scholars. Nevertheless, after independence in 1947, focus on restructuring of village society and development from below. It entailed the reformations and agriculture practice and enhanced the productivity. To foster community development, local government and local development planning, other nuances also emerged, such as the idea of village community, the idea of model village, Albert Meyer, 1945. The concept by improving the living conditions in India villages through economic and political process and progress and inner democratization within hierarchical organizations of the village society, these model villages could set an example for good housing, sanitation, and community structures. We had one example popularly known as Itawa Project 1948. It was the first pilot project of the middle of the model village, Itawa district, Uttar Pradesh. Main activities of the Itawa project: education of villagers on subjects like crop yielding, soil conservation, animal husbandry, sanitation and social education, training of village level workers, conducting demonstrations and coordinations between various departments and agencies. Main innovations of the project: notions of village level workers as the link between the villagers and the government, creation a cadre of a low-cost non-specialist from the village itself to balance the tough, heavy bureaucracy whose field officers were rarely able to visit all the villages in their charge. Itawa pilot project served as a model for the rural development programs in India, first 5-year planned 1951 to 56. Success of the Itawa projects were mainly technical in nature and did not address the social aspects of village organization. Similarly, the nature of people's participation in the community development program in India has been inadequate because the people contributions meant providing contributions in labor or kind. So criticisms of Itawa project can be summarized. The success of Itawa project being mainly technical in nature and did not address the social aspects of community organizations. Nature of people's participation in community development programs in India has been inadequate because people's contributions meant providing contributions in labor or just a kind. Hence, the three-tier Panchayati Raj system was born, formally instituted in 1992 with a vision of Gram Swaraj, village self-rule. Aim was to strengthen people's participation in local self-governance and decentralized administrations, which is also a popular vision and mission and strategies of our founding father Mahatma Gandhi. Development from below, voicing the felt needs of the local community. Major impediments to this idea: hierarchical organizations of the rural society, egalitarian ideals viewed as Western imports. So there has been the emergence and downfall for the Panchayati Raj systems, which was formally instituted 1992 with a vision of Gram Swaraj. Aim was to strengthen people's participation in local self-governance and decentralized administration. Development from below, voicing the self-needs of the people. However, all these endeavors under the garb of Western imports, by mid-1960s, the enthusiasm for Panchayati Raj system also faded drastically. Labor union in India, past and present, came into existence in India after 1918, used by nationalists in the freedom movement as a means to threaten the then colonial government. Hence, Indian labor movement linked to the growth of anti-colonial independence movement still have overlaps with political parties. There were 12 nations federations represent voices and protect interests only of those employed in the formal economy which has just 7% of the workforce, whereas the vast excluded majority working in the informal economy having 93% of the workforce, highly fragmented and politicized. New form of organizing informal economy take cognizance of inadequacies embedded in the social structures and institutions and questions the injustice prevalent in unequal social relations. Social mobilizations, new union in the formal economy also lobby for social security and other social measures to alleviate poverty and structural inequalities through grassroots mobilizations. Activate agencies of the oppressed, providing them the platform to articulate their collective interests on issues of citizens' rights, work and workforce rights, and women's rights and human rights. Thus, union community coalitions building. So we have seen a diverse trajectory of the emergence of community organization from the Western countries, England and United States, on the various modes, fashions and structure, most of it as charity organizations, and then later with the political and social work activists taking the root and enlightenment of the community, the neighborhood themselves, and getting acquainted with the crisis and causes of their suffering, and making them also integral part to struggle the community crisis, the problems and challenges. And hence gradually we see a lot of emphasis given to the community itself, because at the end of the day, it is the empowerment of the community which can resolve its own issues and problems, confront and sustain their livelihood, sustain their development, and be independent, interdependent in their own villages, in their own society, and the country as a whole. Thus, the history of community organization through several process of all these phases came to be one of the full-fledged methods of social work. Hope this is adequate for you. Bit of sharing from diverse literature and personal acquaintance with the topics be helpful to you in further reading, as it is available the reference list you may have an access for your further comprehensions and reading. Thank you very much.